Jim was a park ranger and had been for a long time. He loved his job. Every day he would walk the same path, monitoring the animals' behavior and making sure their water supplies were sufficient. Although the scenery rarely changed, he was always amazed by the wonders he came across. This day, however, when he reached this particular nest, he knew immediately that something horrifically bad had happened. Jim had passed this nest almost daily for the last couple of years. He could still remember the day it first had appeared and had closely watched its development over the years. Normally, he could already hear the happy chirping of the birds from a distance. Today, however, it was quiet. He did hear some other sounds, the rustling of leaves, for instance, and the chirping of other birds somewhere in the park, but around this tree, it was dead silent. This had never happened during all those years that this nest had been in the park. Besides, not one single bird was to be seen here. Usually, Jim could spot at least a few birds hopping around on the nest, and sometimes on slow days. He even watched them bring back twigs and continue expanding the nest further. He carefully approached the tree, not wanting to scare the birds away if they happened to be inside there. After all apart from the silence, everything looked completely normal. Jim did not know for sure that the birds weren't really there, and he did not want to disturb them if they were. Eventually, he decided not to do anything yet. Perhaps there was a perfectly normal explanation for all this, and he did not want to intrude in the bird's home without a good reason, so he backed away and decided to check again tomorrow. If the nest still seemed empty, then he was going to take action. The whole day, Jim couldn't shake off the sense that something was off. He wished that when he came back to the park the next day, the birds would be singing again and everything would return to normal. Naturally, this wasn't going to be the case. In fact, he would eventually have to call the police, but let's not get ahead of the story. The next day, Jim arrived at the park early. He just could not wait to check on that nest again, and he immediately headed for the tree the moment he had it in sight. He could already feel that something was wrong, but he told himself, I shouldn't rush to any conclusions yet. As he drew closer to the tree, he noticed some marks on the ground that he did not recognize. He knew they could not have been made by an animal at least, not any kind of animal known to live in this park. Oh no, he said, as he thought about all the dangerous predators that might have managed to find their way in here. Jim became really concerned for a moment there, but after looking closely at the remainder of the area around the tree, he decided that the birds most definitely hadn't been attacked. There were no feathers or injured birds on the ground, which made him assume that whatever happened, they weren't harmed in a rush. The tree was too tall to allow him to see inside the nest, and he really needed to do that to understand what was happening there. So he headed to the ranger station and fetched all the equipment he needed. Normally, he made his way around the park on foot, but now he took a truck. When he arrived, he unloaded the ladder and placed it next to the tree. It was shaking while he climbed up, but he was really eager to look inside the nest. Normally, the shaking and clattering of the ladder would have frightened the birds, causing them to fly out of the nest. This time, however, not a single bird appeared, which only strengthened Jim's belief that something was amiss. With each passing second, he felt more convinced that the nest would be empty. But of course, he wouldn't know for sure until he looked inside. The only way to do this was by cutting open the nest, which is why he had brought all kinds of tools with him. As soon as he climbed high enough on the ladder to get a better look at the nest, he noticed something that made his eyes widen in disbelief. How is this possible? He exclaimed. He almost lost his balance and fell off the ladder. That's how shocked he was. Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important for us. Thank you very much. You see, this nest was usually very thick and it provided cover to the birds inside. But here there was a huge hole in the nest, and Jim was sure that the birds themselves had not made this. So the question remained, who had done it? Because of this hole, Jim could finally take a look inside the nest, and his suspicions were confirmed. There weren't any birds inside it, but this didn't mean that the nest was completely empty. No, to the contrary, he found something inside that should not have been in there, and he went down the ladder at once to get his phone and call the police. Jim quickly went down the ladder. He felt his heart racing due to the shock of an empty nest. Perplexed and concerned, he dialed the police, tense in his voice as he explained what he saw. He referred to the unusual emptiness of the nest and the weird thing that he found inside. He waited anxiously for them to reply, expecting urgency from them, as he hoped they would understand the gravity of the situation. The police, on the other hand, didn't seem to grasp the urgency of Jim's call. Over the phone, they sounded dismissive, suggesting it probably had to do with some animal or other trivial oddity. They reassured Jim it wasn't something the police needed to look into and advised him to keep an eye on it, but not to worry too much. Standing alone in the quiet at park, a wave of frustration washed over Jim. The police's indifference stung. He knew what he saw wasn't ordinary, yet his concerns were batted aside. The mystery of the nest nipped at him. Should he just let it go, as the police had suggested, or should he delve deeper, trusting his instincts that something was amiss? After wrestling with his thoughts, Jim's decision was clear. If the police wouldn't act, he would. Something about the nest and its contents did not sit right with him, and he could not leave it be. The frustration was replaced by determination. He would initiate his own investigation, gather evidence, and document everything. He wasn't just a park ranger. He was now a man on a mission. Returning to the nest, Jim began his solo investigation. First, he examined the ground. Around the tree, searching for any sign that might account for the nest's state. Footprints, discarded items, anything unusual. To be thorough and objective, he noted and photographed everything in order to piece together the puzzle of the silent nest and its mysterious contents. Jim's eyes scoured the ground around the nest with meticulous attention. He scanned the area for any signs of disturbance that might explain the mystery of the nest. Broken branches, disturbed soil, strange markings. Anything out of the ordinary. He took note of every detail. No matter how minor it seemed, each observation could be a vital clue to uncovering what had happened to this once bustling nest. Jim reached out to his fellow rangers, hoping they might have noticed something he hadn't. Have you noticed anything strange around the big nest recently? He asked each person. There was responses varied, but none had observed anything significant. However, Jim's determination didn't waver. He knew that sometimes the smallest detail, easily overlooked, could be the clue to a puzzle. Next, Jim spoke with park visitors. Have you guys noticed anything strange around that huge nest while walking around? He asked them kindly. Most of them shook their heads, but a few told him about the shadows or strange sounds they had heard around the nest. These were blurry accounts, though. Jim jotted down everything. Back to his office, Jim spread his notes and the photos, looking for a pattern. Pieces were few and confusing. Strange noise was reported by visitors. His colleagues didn't report anything strange. The nest silence. Jim looked at the information, trying to connect these desperate elements into a coherent story. What was happening at that nest? Jim refocused on the tree and its surroundings. That's when he spotted a pattern in the marks near the tree's base, almost hidden beneath the undergrowth. These marks weren't random or the result of natural, where they appeared deliberate, even methodical. But what could they mean? This new discovery added another layer of mystery to the silent nest. As Jim examined the peculiar mark by the tree, a realization dawned on him. These signs weren't the work of animals. They bore the unmistakable hint of human interference. The pattern of the marks and their placement all pointed towards a deliberate action by someone. This was a critical shift in Jim's investigation. The silent nest was now a scene of human involvement. Further inspection revealed more telling signs hidden among the foliage. Jim found footprints too large and distinct to be from any animal in the park. Nearby, on the tree bark, were faint but discernible tool marks. These were not random. They were the result of specific intentional actions. Jim's heart was racing as he documented every footprint and mark, and a growing sense of urgency took hold of him, remembering the reports by visitors about shadows and sounds. Jim started to see a pattern. He remembered seeing lights in the park after hours, something he had initially dismissed. Their behavior, the tools, the timing of their visits all were indicative of involvement with the strange happenings at the nest. Jim knew he was onto something big and that he had to keep up the surveillance, capture enough evidence to prove that they had something to do with whatever was going on in his park. Jim's inquiry took a turn for the worrisome when he discovered a note pinned to his office doorstop. Stop looking where you shouldn't. The message was clear and threatening. Someone had noticed his snooping and wasn't happy about it. This revelation gave Jim a chill, yet it reassured him that he was on the right path. Despite forbidding signs, Jim stood firm in his resolution. If anything, a sense of danger heightened his determination. He knew the stakes were rising, but so was the urgency of his investigation. Jim strengthened his resolve, understanding that backing off would mean allowing whatever was happening in the park to continue unchecked. On a hunch, Jim decided to explore an overgrown path had previously overlooked. It was tucked away in a less frequented part of the park, hidden by thick foliage. Carefully making his way through, he found it led to a secluded area not visible from the main paths. It was the perfect spot for someone wanting to avoid detection. In this hidden area, Jim's discoveries were alarming. He found several tools that were out of place in a nature reserve with empty cages of various sizes. These items pointed to illegal activities, possibly the trapping of wildlife or something equally sinister. Jim documented everything with his camera, the weight of his findings heavy on him. The hint of a hidden secret within the nest caught the officer's attention. It was a calculated move by Jim to draw the police into the investigation and steer them toward the core of the mystery. Convinced by the evidence, the police decided to work alongside him. And for Jim, it marked an important breakthrough. Persistence and dedication finally paid off. Together, they charted out a plan to dig deeper into the case. Jim felt vindicated and hopeful. With the authorities on his side, they could delve deeper into the mysteries surrounding the park and the nest. In the meeting with the police, Jim laid out all his evidence. The photographs of the tools and cages, the patterns of the suspicious group's visits, and his notes themselves. The skeptical officers had listened intently as the potential scale of illegal activities in the park made their skepticism turn into concern. Together with the police, Jim started to plan an operation that would show the full extent of illegal activities in the park. During the sting operation, Jim and the police made a startling discovery in the nest that it was concealing a cache of rare animal eggs. These eggs were not native to the park. It was illegal to have them there and dangerous for the local ecosystem. This discovery was the missing piece of the puzzle that linked the mysterious activities in the park to a wildlife smuggling investigation. Further investigation into the eggs revealed a shocking revelation. They were part of a larger illegal wildlife trade network. Smugglers had been using the park as a secret hub for their illicit activities, placing rare species in danger. This network was larger and more organized than anyone could have ever imagined, operating under the cover of the park's natural beauty. In the sting operation, Jim played an important role. Using his vast knowledge of the park, helped the police position themselves to advantageously apprehend the smugglers without their knowing. His knowledge of the park's topography and how this suspicious group was behaving was priceless. Jim, generally a park ranger, found himself in the midst of an undercover operation. The operation was a success. The smugglers were caught red-handed with the rare eggs and were arrested. Evidence by Jim, combined with the police's strategy, led to a swift and effective capture. This was a triumph for Jim and the police, marking the end of the smugglers' illegal activities in the park and the beginning of justice for the wildlife they had endangered. With the capture of the smuggler, the full extent of their operations came to light. As the investigation showed, there was a complex network involved in the illegal trade of rare animals and their eggs. The nest in the park had just been one part of their widespread illegal activities. Jim's dedication and the collaborative effort with the police had brought a big wildlife smuggling ring to an end. The smugglers, once apprehended, faced the full weight of the law for their crimes. The court hearings uncovered the vast scope of their illegal activities, underscoring the seriousness of wildlife trafficking. Justice was served as they received penalties appropriate to the severity of their offenses. This outcome represented a significant win for wildlife preservation and a powerful reminder of the need for constant vigilance and conservation efforts. Did you enjoy this story? Would you, when faced with the risks and threats, have acted as Tim did, which, by the way, is super sad because 200 to 2,000 animal species go extinct every year. Like our page to know about new stories. Subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Sometimes, courage combined with determination does pay off. Thanks so much for listening. Catch you in the next video, and have a great day.